In the deep reaches of space, the Galactic Federation had established its dominance centuries ago. Its members were vast and varied. Each alien race brought its unique strengths to the table, and over time they had forged an empire without rival. They were technologically advanced, their weaponry unmatched, their fleets were the largest and most powerful in the galaxy, their unity unbroken. But then came the message. It arrived in a stream of encrypted data intercepted by a Federation listening post, a seemingly innocent signal at first glance, but one that carried a single word in a language no one had heard before. After decoding it, the word became clear: *humanity*. The transmission was too brief to fully understand, but the implications were staggering. A race of humans had sent this message, and the Federation had no records of them. It was like a ghost emerging from the darkness of forgotten space. The news spread quickly through the Federation Council chambers. Panic was unspoken but palpable. The humans were unknown. Their history was a mystery. Their technology was a complete enigma. The message carried no further details. It was a signal sent without fanfare, no demands, no threats. But that word humanity lingered in the air, like a challenge. The Federation had dealt with countless species over the centuries, but never had they faced anything so sudden, so cryptic. In the moments that followed, the Council debated their response. Some believed it was a hoax, a fluke, something that could be dismissed. Others were less certain. A few even questioned if humanity was a threat. One delegate stood and proposed they send a scout fleet to investigate this new race, find the human homeworld, and learn what they could before making any rash decisions. The debate raged on for hours, but finally it was settled. The Federation would send its most experienced fleet to investigate the humans. The fleet was one of the best in the entire Federation, composed of ships from different worlds. Each ship was a masterpiece of alien engineering. They were sleek and deadly, their weapons capable of annihilating entire planets with a single volley. There was no question in the minds of those present that they would return victorious and report back with nothing more than the intelligence on a minor race with no chance of threatening the Federation. They set their course with arrogance in their hearts and certainty in their minds. As the fleet traveled toward the unknown sector, they laughed among themselves, dismissing the threat of a race that had no known presence in the galaxy. They would discover the humans were just another primitive species, struggling to survive. They would learn their technology was underdeveloped and easily outclassed. The Federation had always been superior, and there was no reason to believe this would be any different. But as they approached the sector where the transmission had originated, something began to shift in the air. The vastness of space suddenly felt heavier, as if the very stars were watching their every move. The fleet slowed their approach. Something was wrong. Their sensors began to flicker. Strange signals filled the void like whispers from a distant storm. The leaders of the fleet exchanged nervous glances. The arrogance they had once carried now felt like a weakness, an echo of past victories that no longer seemed so certain. They had no idea what awaited them, but they were about to find out. As the fleet neared the coordinates, the atmosphere within the command ship grew tense. The officers at their stations remained silent, their eyes locked on the growing image of the unknown sector on the viewscreen ahead. The once reassuring blackness of space now seemed oppressive and filled with unseen threats. The ships moved in formation, their systems scanning every inch of space, looking for any sign of the humans or their mysterious battleship. Yet there was nothing, no sign of civilization, no trace of activity except for the faintest anomaly, a pulse of energy so subtle it could have been dismissed as a malfunction, but something told the fleet commanders to keep their focus. The lead ship of the fleet was a colossal vessel, its armor plates designed to withstand the most violent of attacks, its engines powered by cores that could incinerate entire moons with a mere flicker of their energy. Yet as it cruised deeper into the unknown sector, it felt small, insignificant, compared to the unsettling emptiness around it. Then came the second anomaly, a signal barely perceptible, but undeniably human. The Federation had no record of such technology. Their sensors couldn't identify its origin. It was a hum, a low droning vibration that seemed to stretch across the fabric of space, and for a moment it was as though the universe itself had paused, holding its breath. The fleet slowed once more, the tension rising to a fever pitch, every officer on edge, every hand hovering over weapons controls. They had expected to find nothing, But now they were faced with the possibility of something far greater, something they weren't ready for. As they neared the heart of the sector, the sky of stars began to shift. The darkness seemed to fold in on itself. A shape slowly coalesced out of the void, something massive, something incomprehensible. And then they saw it, a shadow darker than the surrounding space, yet almost alive as it stretched across the stars. For a moment, the fleet commanders thought it might be a mirage, something their minds had conjured to make sense of the overwhelming tension. But as the object grew clearer, it became undeniable. This was no mirage, this was real. The human battleship emerged from the emptiness with an eerie grace, its silhouette sharp and angular, a vast ship beyond anything the Federation had ever seen. Its body was a smooth mass of metal like liquid darkness, rippling under the weight of unseen energy. Its weapons were colossal towers of gleaming light, almost as if the ship itself had been forged from the raw power of the universe. The commanders of the fleet felt a shiver of something primal, a feeling they had never encountered before in their centuries of conquest and exploration. Aboard the command ship, the officers gasped. The data flooding in was beyond belief. The battleship was alive, in a way that defied all Federation understanding. Its energy levels were off the charts. No known technology could generate such raw power. And yet there it was, hanging in the void, unmoving, as if waiting. The human ship didn't advance or retreat. It simply hovered in space, watching them, like a predator waiting for the right moment to strike. Communications were initiated, but the humans made no response. The message they had sent had been a fluke, a warning, or perhaps an invitation. But the silence now was deafening. The fleet leaders were growing uneasy. The thought that they had underestimated this race began to fester in their minds. But it was too late for second thoughts. They had no choice but to approach. Yet as they did, they couldn't shake the feeling that they were not in control of this encounter, but instead were already trapped in a game whose rules they didn't understand, a game where the humans were the ones holding all the cards. The Federation fleet began to close in on the human battleship, the distance between them slowly shrinking. But the sense of unease grew heavier with each passing moment. No one spoke, but the tension could be felt across the entire fleet. It was as if they were being pulled towards something they couldn't comprehend. Every officer on board the ships felt it. The knowledge that they were staring into the heart of a force that might utterly shatter their view of the galaxy. The command ship led the way, its engines humming with controlled power as it glided forward, its sensors scanning relentlessly. The human battleship remained stationary, its immense size impossible to ignore, its weapons towers glimmering with an otherworldly glow like sentinels guarding the very fabric of space itself. Despite its apparent stillness, the human ship radiated an energy so potent that even the most advanced Federation ships had trouble matching its intensity. The fleet commanders studied the human ship on their screens, trying to make sense of it, but the more they analyzed, the more confused they became. The design was alien to them, not just in its structure, but in its essence. It defied all expectations. There were no obvious weak points, no visible openings or docking bays. The ship appeared to be one continuous, unbroken mass of technology. It looked as though it was a single living organism, not a mechanical vessel at all. The first officer aboard the command ship, an experienced veteran of many encounters, stared at the view screen with a furrowed brow. He had seen battleships before, but nothing like this. His mind raced, trying to understand the energy signatures flooding his instruments. The human ship was radiating energy in ways that were completely foreign to him. It seemed to pulse in a rhythmic pattern like the beating of a heart. But this wasn't biology. This was something else entirely, a weaponized force that could outstrip anything the Federation had ever built. Then the hum began. It started as a faint vibration that tingled through the hull of the ships, a sound like distant thunder, yet it resonated deep within their bones. The Federation fleet commanders exchanged uneasy glances. At first, it was almost imperceptible, but then it grew louder, the vibration humming across the void, becoming an all-encompassing presence. The ship's hulls seemed to vibrate in unison, as though they were being tested by an invisible force. The signal then reached a crescendo, and suddenly the human battleship responded. The silence of space was shattered as the ship's massive weapon systems flared to life. The Federation fleet commanders braced themselves for an attack, But nothing came instead. The energy from the human ship surged forward in a pulse of blinding light, a beam so powerful it seemed to distort the very fabric of space itself as it shot toward the Federation command ship. In an instant, the fleet scrambled to react, their weapon systems activating, but the human beam was too fast. It tore through the void with such force that the Federation ship's shields disintegrated like paper in a fire. The impact rocked the entire fleet, sending shockwaves through space. The command ship was thrown off course as its engines failed under the sheer power of the blast. For a moment, everything was chaos. The Federation ships tried to regroup, but the human battleship wasn't finished. The ship's guns pulsed again, this time unleashing a storm of energy that lashed out like a whip across the fleet. Ships exploded in blinding flashes, their shields and armor no match for the raw power of the human ship's weapons. The fleet commanders realized too late that their once imposing fleet was being torn apart with terrifying precision. There was no warning, no sign of mercy. The human battleship was relentless. It wasn't just a weapon, it was a force of nature, something beyond their understanding. The human ship moved with an agility that defied the laws of physics. Its energy beams were sharp and fast, cutting through the Federation ships like a blade through fabric. As the Federation fleet scattered in disarray, they could only watch in horror as their numbers dwindled. The message had been clear: the humans weren't here to negotiate, they weren't here to talk. They were here to show the galaxy their power. The chaos of the battle unfolded in a frenzy of energy and explosions as the Federation fleet struggled to regain control of the situation. The once confident commanders now found themselves scrambling to formulate a plan, but the human battleship was always one step ahead, its every move executed with a precision that seemed almost preordained, its weapons lashing out in perfect synchronization. With its evasions, the Federation ships fired relentlessly, but each shot seemed to miss by mere inches. The human ship moved with an impossible agility, its enormous form darting through the void like a shadow. On the bridge of the Federation's flagship, the command staff was in complete disarray. The once steely, calm officers were now openly panicking as reports of catastrophic damage flooded in. One ship after another was torn apart in flashes of blinding light. Entire sections of their fleet were vanishing from the view screens, their ships becoming debris in the cold emptiness of space. "Deploy the backup shields," screamed the fleet commander, his voice sharp with urgency, but it was already too late. The shields were no match for the overwhelming power of the human weapons. Across the fleet, the officers could only watch in horror as their ships were dismantled at will. There was no opportunity to counterattack, no time to regroup. The human battleship wasn't merely firing its weapons. It was dissecting the entire Federation fleet with frightening efficiency. The Federation's finest military minds were stunned into inaction. Nothing in their entire history had ever prepared them for an enemy like this. The human ship was a monster, but not in the way they had imagined. It wasn't the size that made it terrifying. It wasn't the weaponry alone. It was the cold, calculating nature of its assault, its uncanny ability to anticipate their every move. The Federation had prided itself on its strategies, its tactical superiority. But the humans didn't fight by the same rules. They didn't think in terms of formations or predictable maneuvers. They were unpredictable, chaotic, and utterly devastating. One Federation ship, a battle cruiser of immense size, attempted to flank the human vessel from the rear, its weapons primed for a surprise attack, but the human battleship didn't even flinch. It turned on a dime, faster than any ship of its size had a right to, and fired a single burst of energy that cut the cruiser in half, its two massive halves spinning out of control before detonating into a cloud of burning fragments. The remaining fleet ships tried to retreat, but the human battleship didn't allow them the luxury of escape. It moved with an eerie intelligence, anticipating their movements with a level of awareness that felt more like a predator toying with its prey rather than a mere machine firing on all cylinders. Desperation began to set in among the remaining Federation commanders, their confidence shattered by the sheer brutality of the human assault. They issued commands to retreat, to fall back and regroup, but it was futile. The human battleship was everywhere, at once, its weapons striking with pinpoint accuracy, tearing through the fleeing ships one by one. The Federation's most advanced ships, each one a triumph of engineering and decades of accumulated knowledge, were being reduced to nothing more than floating wreckage, the once feared fleet now a shadow of its former self, scattered and broken in the face of the relentless human power. And still, the human ship did not show mercy. Aboard the Federation's flagship, the commander stood frozen before the viewscreen as his fleet was torn apart. He had fought in dozens of wars, had seen the might of the Federation's forces crush countless species without breaking a sweat. But this was different. This wasn't a battle anymore. It was a slaughter. The realization hit him like a tidal wave. The Federation wasn't the predator anymore, they were the prey. Through the chaos, a chilling thought began to solidify in the commander's mind. It wasn't just that the humans were better, faster, and stronger. It was that they had no need for tactics or strategy. As the Federation knew them, they were a force of nature that operated beyond the confines of reason and preparation. They fought in a way the Federation couldn't even understand. And that realization was the most terrifying thing of all. The human battleship fired again, and another Federation ship vanished in a flash of light, as the rest of the fleet scattered to avoid the same fate. The battle was already over. The Federation fleet was in full retreat, its once proud formation reduced to a disorganized mass of ships fleeing in every direction. The humans didn't chase them. Instead, they simply watched, as if the very act of pursuing was beneath them. The human battleship remained in place, hovering at the center of the battlefield, its weapons glowing ominously as it watched the last of the Federation ships scatter into the depths of space. The feeling was undeniable. The humans had not just won. They had completely shattered the Federation's illusions of invincibility. Aboard the flagship, the commander stood at the front of the command deck, his face pale and lined with disbelief. He had seen the reports. He had heard the comms chatter of the other captains desperately trying to flee the onslaught, but witnessing the destruction firsthand was another matter entirely. His fleet, his pride, was in tatters. Ships he had commanded for years were now little more than space debris. How could this have happened? How had they underestimated these humans so completely? "What now, Commander?" asked the tactical officer, her voice a mixture of fear and disbelief. She glanced at the viewscreen where the last remnants of their fleet were limping toward the edge of the sector, desperately trying to escape the unyielding human force. "We regroup," the commander replied, though his voice lacked conviction. We report back. Prepare for the worst." Behind him, the crew members moved with an eerie sense of urgency. There was no longer any arrogance in their actions. The Federation fleet was humbled. The humans had given them no opportunity to recover, no chance to regroup. They had fought with a savage efficiency that had taken the Federation completely off guard. The humans weren't like anything they had encountered before. Not just technologically superior, but something else, something raw and primal. As the remaining Federation ships limped toward the jump point, their crews in stunned silence, one of the surviving commanders broke into a frantic transmission, their voice cracking with terror. "We've underestimated them. They're more than just a ship. They're something else. They didn't fight like we did. They don't even seem to care about strategy. They just destroy. The human battleship, still hovering in the black void, responded with silence. There was no taunting message, no declaration of victory, no celebration. It was as though the ship didn't care whether the Federation fleet fled or fought. It was simply indifferent, a force that could not be bargained with. It was not a warship, it was a statement. The tension aboard the flagship thickened as the final orders were issued. The commander's hand trembled slightly as he issued the command to engage their FTL drives. The remaining ships, battered and broken, vanished into the distance, leaving behind the wreckage of their once mighty fleet. They would return home, but there would be no reports of victory. No victory speeches. There was nothing left but the sting of failure. As the last of the fleet disappeared into the folds of faster-than-light space, the commander allowed himself one final glance at the viewscreen. The human battleship was still there, a dark, implacable presence in the void. The commander didn't know if the humans would pursue or leave them to lick their wounds, but one thing was certain. The galaxy had just changed. He had been part of a force that had stood unchallenged for centuries. But now, in the wake of this encounter, he knew the truth. The humans were something new, something unimaginable. They didn't just have technology, they had a force of will, an asterisk intensity asterisk that the Federation had never known. The galaxy wasn't theirs anymore, not with the humans in it. In that moment, the commander realized that the true power of humanity wasn't in their ships or weapons. It was in their unwavering resolve. A species that would stop at nothing. A species that would asterisk not asterisk be ignored. And as he watched the human ship drift silently into the void, the chilling thought crossed his mind. The war had just begun. The Federation's retreat wasn't swift enough to erase the haunting memory of what had happened. As their ships plunged into the folds of faster-than-light travel, the crew aboard the flagship remained quiet, each person absorbed in their own thoughts, struggling to process what they had just witnessed. It wasn't just a battle they had lost. It was an existential revelation. The human ship had destroyed them with such raw power and precision that even their most seasoned commanders couldn't comprehend how it had happened. Back at Federation Command, the mood was grim. The once proud officers who had sat around the council table were now focused on a single question that echoed in every corner of their halls. Asterisk, what were the humans? Asterisk. The intelligence officers worked tirelessly to analyze every scrap of data recovered from the engagement. They combed through communications, sensors, battle logs, and everything in between, trying to find some hint, some clue that would explain the human ship's incredible power. But every time they thought they understood, another anomaly appeared, turning their analysis into a frustrating cycle of dead ends. No alien technology could replicate what they had seen. There was nothing in the galaxy that could have prepared them for an enemy like this. The Federation had weapons capable of annihilating entire planets, fleets capable of crushing thousands of enemies with ease, but what they faced in the humans wasn't mere superiority. It was something more ancient, something primal. They couldn't even begin to replicate the human ship's energy emissions, its ability to adapt and respond in real time with a level of precision they had never seen. Their technology is beyond anything we've encountered, one officer muttered, his voice strained. He stared at the blank screen before him, feeling both awe and fear churn in his stomach. And their ship, it's not just a weapon. It's a force. Commander Krishar, the highest-ranking officer who had survived the disaster, stood in front of the assembly with a grim expression. His uniform was wrinkled, his face pale from the stress of the battle's aftermath. But his eyes were sharp, cold with determination. He was a leader, and despite the crushing defeat, he had to remain composed. "We can't afford to underestimate them again," Krishar said, his voice low but authoritative. "We've seen what they are capable of. We've seen how they destroy with no mercy, no strategy, no rules. They just erase anything that threatens them. This cannot be allowed to continue." The room fell into a tense silence. Officers exchanged glances, all of them uncertain, afraid. For the first time in centuries, the Federation's military leaders were shaken. They had faced revolts, wars, and uprisings from countless species, but nothing like this. Nothing had ever made them feel so small. Krishar took a deep breath, his gaze narrowing. "I want a full-scale analysis. Gather the most brilliant minds in the Federation. We need a plan, and we need it now. The officers nodded, reluctantly, as they turned to begin their assignments. But Krishar knew that no amount of analysis could undo the damage done. The battle had shown them that the Federation, for all its might, was no longer the unquestioned ruler of the galaxy. There was a new power in play, and it had shown them the most terrifying thing of all. It wasn't a power they could defeat. Meanwhile, in the far reaches of the galaxy, the human battleship drifted through the stars, silent, motionless. On board, the crew, humans who had seen and survived countless battles, remained calm. They weren't gloating, weren't celebrating. They had one mission: to protect their people. But in the deep silence of space, they all understood the true significance of their victory. This was only the beginning, and the Federation, despite its arrogance, had just been given its first true warning. The galaxy was no longer theirs to command. There was no turning back now. The weeks following the catastrophic defeat of the Federation fleet were tense, filled with uncertainty and dread. The Federation Council convened in an emergency session, with all the leaders and military officials watching their screens as the latest intelligence reports were presented. The once unstoppable force that had ruled the galaxy for centuries now found itself grappling with a new reality. The humans were not only real, but they were a threat unlike anything the Federation had ever encountered. Commander Crusher stood before the council, his face steely and impassive. The weight of the situation bore down on him. The Federation's pride had been shattered. The defeat they had suffered was not one of mere loss. It was a loss of reputation, of power, and of control. The entire galaxy was now aware of the humans, and many of the Federation's lesser allies had begun to question the once infallible authority of the Federation. The balance of power was beginning to shift. "We underestimated them," Crusher said, his voice steady, though the words hung in the air like a heavy burden. "We were blind to what they are capable of. But no more. This isn't just a threat to us. It's a threat to the entire galaxy. We must act before it's too late." The council murmured in agreement, but there was an underlying sense of fear in their voices. They had been the ones who had led countless campaigns across the stars, who had crushed rebellion after rebellion. And now they were reduced to planning against a single species that had, without effort, rendered their might irrelevant. "We need to find out how to combat them," one of the officers spoke up. "Their ships, their weapons, they don't obey the laws of physics. There is no way they could have developed this technology in isolation. There must be a way to learn from them, or better yet, subdue them before they grow stronger." Another officer, his eyes narrowed with suspicion, added, "We don't even know where they come from. They just appeared out of nowhere. There is no record of them in any Federation archives. We don't know how far they've spread or if they have allies. We could be facing a force larger than we can imagine." Crusher nodded gravely. "We'll need more than intelligence. We need to understand how they fight, what makes them different from all the species we've conquered. We've faced war before, but not on this scale. We need to study their methods, their culture, their philosophy. It's the only way we stand a chance." A sense of resolve began to settle over the room, but it was mixed with trepidation. The Federation had never had to deal with a species that refused to play by their rules. This would require something beyond military force, something more fundamental. Meanwhile, far from the clamor of the Federation's war room, the human battleship drifted silently in the darkness. Its crew, fully aware of the weight of what had just occurred, remained at their posts, focused and disciplined. They had no need for victory speeches or celebrations. They had only one goal: to protect their people, their world, and their way of life. The captain of the human ship, a seasoned veteran of many conflicts, stood in front of the observation window, staring out into the vastness of space. The Federation had been an imposing force, yes, but it was no longer. Humanity had made its mark, and that was only the beginning. The defeat of the Federation was a message, not just to their adversaries, but to every species in the galaxy. Humanity was not to be underestimated. "We've made our point," the captain said, his voice calm but firm. "But this isn't the end. It's just the start of what's coming. The Federation may think they can regroup and retaliate, but they've already lost the war. It's only a matter of time." He turned to his crew, who were all fully aware of the gravity of their mission. They had sent a clear message to the galaxy. Humanity was not a species to be ignored. And now, it was time to ensure that their enemies and their allies understood the full extent of their power. As the human battleship drifted farther into the unknown, leaving the shattered remnants of the Federation fleet far behind, The captain knew one thing for certain. They had done more than just defeat an enemy. They had altered the course of history. The galaxy was no longer a place ruled by ancient empires. It was a place where humanity would make its own destiny, and no one would be able to stop them. The galaxy was silent for the first time in centuries as the reverberations of the human victory spread across the stars. The Federation was broken, its once unstoppable military force humbled beyond measure. The remaining systems under its control were now filled with uncertainty. The war councils that had once strategized to conquer new worlds now found themselves scrambling, unable to keep up with the humans who had so decisively rewritten the rules of warfare. Every species that had lived under the shadow of the Federation now felt the tremors of change. Humanity was not just a new player in the galaxy. They were a force of nature, a species that had gone from being an afterthought in the grand galactic hierarchy to the most feared entity in existence. The Federation's leaders understood now that this was not the kind of power you could challenge with fleets or political maneuvering. The defeat was not just about the destruction of their ships. It was about the revelation of a new kind of strength, something that defied logic, something raw and primal. In the wake of the battle, the Federation scrambled to reassert its dominance. But it was too late. The humans had struck a blow that had irrevocably shifted the balance of power. Crusher, now one of the last voices of authority among the Federation's commanders, stood before a room full of his surviving peers, each one struggling to hold on to their last shreds of confidence. Their once infallible military doctrine lay in tatters, and the harsh reality was that they had no answers. "We've done all we can," Crusher said grimly, his voice quiet but firm. "We've analyzed their technology, their tactics, their weapons. But the truth is, we don't understand them. We can't predict what they'll do next. We can't control them. And worst of all, they don't fear us." A heavy silence filled the room as the commanders absorbed his words. The galaxy had watched the humans destroy the Federation fleet with ease. There were no secret weapons to uncover, no weaknesses to exploit. They had no means to retaliate, no way to turn the tide. All that remained was the uncomfortable truth that they had been completely outmatched. "We've underestimated them for far too long," one of the officers said, his voice shaking with frustration. "We thought they were just another species, one more in the long line of civilizations we could dominate. But they're not like the others. They don't think like we do. They don't care about trees or alliances. They care about survival. They fight for it. And they will never back down." Crusher nodded. "We're dealing with something more than just a military force. The humans are a nation of survivors. They've learned to adapt, to evolve, to grow stronger from their struggles. And now, they've shown the galaxy what they're capable of." Back aboard the human battleship, the crew moved in a fluid, synchronized manner. They were calm, focused, as always. The captain surveyed the galaxy around them, now seeing it in a new light. The battle had been a statement, but it was only the beginning. They weren't just defending their home anymore. They were shaping the future of this galaxy, and it was their destiny to lead it. The Federation had shown its hand, and humanity had proven that it would not be intimidated, nor would it yield to forces that sought to enslave or control. "We've won the battle," the captain said, his voice carrying through the command deck. "But there's more to do. The Federation may have been humiliated, but they're not done yet. They'll regroup, they'll rebuild, but we'll be ready." His eyes narrowed with resolve. "The galaxy may think it's still theirs for the taking, but they're wrong. We're not just fighting for survival anymore. We're fighting for our future." Humanity had shown its strength, and now it would show its resolve. There would be no turning back. The Federation's dominance was shattered, but the fight had only just begun. The future of the galaxy was in humanity's hands, and they would make sure no one ever forgot it.